refuge is if you've ever been caught outside in a hailstorm. My 12-year-old daughter, a friend, and I were caught in a fast-moving thunderstorm this summer in Yosemite. As we jogged across the bare earth and along granite cliffs pummeled by hailstones and ducking at each deafening crash of thunder, our definition of refuge became less and less exclusive. We settled for shivering behind a stand of pines where the hailstones were at least deflected before dropping onto our heads, and the risk of joining the tree as a lightning rod was, we hoped, reduced by our distance from the tree trunks. Refuge. A place to hide from danger or impending danger. A safe place. Escape. Refuge may be a large deep cove on the leeward side of an island to a wary sea captain with dark clouds glowering to stern. Refuge may be a locked, graffiti-covered bathroom stall to the harried and ridiculed middle school girl. Refuge may be a tree fort in a suburban backyard, or a grandmother's warm chocolate chip cookie-scented kitchen on a snowy afternoon. The concept of refuge draws meaning from a variety of scenarios, but they all revolve around a single theme: a place of escape. The Old Testament prophet Samuel records David backing his way through the Philistine-infested wilderness in an attempt to avoid a confrontation with his own king, Saul. He finally found refuge at En-Gedi, a naturally fortified oasis on the edge of the Judean desert. This became the setting for the gracious generosity of David, who, given the opportunity to destroy the megalomaniacal king, backed down and refused to force God's revealed plan into his own time frame. En-Gedi remains a synonym for refuge today because not only David, but also Saul found a refuge from pursuit in that place. David found refuge from Saul, and Saul found momentary refuge from the demons that whispered treacherous and treasonous lies about the young man who had so recently served in his close confidence. Barely 100 miles to the north, and 3,000 years later, over 4 million Syrians have, over approximately 4 years, become classified as those in search of a safe place. Refugees. 2015 has seen a refugee crisis unparalleled since the Second World War thunder like storm-driven waves against the borders of European nations. Battered under the barrage of humanity, Greece and Italy, financially impotent to facilitate the storm surge and physically incapable of stopping it, watch with horror as small boats laden with entire families capsize or deflate within sight of safety, adding to the thousands already drowned in the unforgiving waters of the Mediterranean Sea. How is it that these men and women see a slippery black inflatable raft overcrowded by dozens of similarly vulnerable seafarers as a refuge, or at least a likely means of attaining refuge? What fear and despair drives them to such extremes in search of a safe place? Life's questions are not always easy to answer, and a safe place to run is not always obvious. 2 times, the Bible records the disciples of Jesus pulling hard against the waves and wind on the Sea of Galilee, struggling to bring their boat to a place of safety, failing miserably. Neither time did they reach the place of refuge for which they strove. 2 times, the disciples of Jesus fought against forces that would certainly destroy them. Both times they failed, yet both times they emerged unscathed. In both situations, Jesus used their exigency as an opportunity to demonstrate for them their need for refuge far beyond their immediate calamity. Both times, once in waking from sleep, and once while walking across the water, he demonstrated that his presence alone was refuge in the midst of their storm. It seems Jesus wanted them to recognize not only his power over creation, but also where it was that they should look when in search of help. Even as he ascended to heaven following his death and resurrection, leaving them feeling vulnerable and more than a little nervous, he reminded them, "Lo, I am with you always." In other words, I'm always going to be near you, that you might find refuge in me. Those who had seen firsthand what sanctuary and safety could be experienced in the presence of Jesus would have certainly found much comfort in the words, "I am with you always." That promise was not just for the 12 disciples. Those words were for all the disciples of Jesus, even for us, 2,000 years later. "I am with you" applies to the disciple today, whether she be a Syrian mother fleeing the Middle East, a businessman cleaning out his desk, or a crushed high school girl who can't seem to fit in. We can all say with the psalmist, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer, my God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge, my Savior." We can say with Isaiah, "You have been a defense for the helpless, a defense for the needy in his distress, a refuge from the storm, a shade from the heat." Or with the 19th century poet Vernon Charlesworth, "O rock divine, O refuge dear, a shelter in the time of storm. Be thou our helper ever near, a shelter in the time of storm."